The world of Heartland was about to change forever. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth. The sun began to dip behind the distant mountains, casting a warm glow across the sprawling ranch. Everything felt like it had been in a steady rhythm, as if the land itself had found peace after so many years of hardship. But as the golden light shifted, a storm was brewing, a storm that none of them could have anticipated. Amy Fleming stood in the yard, her hands lightly brushing the reins of a horse she had been working with all afternoon. The ranch had always been her sanctuary, her place of healing, but there were times when even Heartland couldn't heal the parts of her soul that had been left bruised and broken. Ty's absence had left an ache that no amount of time or love could fill. Amy had tried to move on, to build a new life for herself and her daughter, Lindy. But Ty, the love of her life, was always a shadow at the edge of her mind. Her thoughts were interrupted by the unmistakable sound of a truck's engine approaching. The rhythmic rumble grew louder as it came closer, a sound that, for a moment, caused Amy's heart to skip a beat. She stood still, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling inside her. Could it be? Could this be the day she had long dreamed of, hoped for in the quiet moments of her loneliness? The truck pulled up to the driveway, dust kicking up around it as it slowed to a stop. Amy's breath caught in her throat, and before she could make sense of what she was seeing, the door of the truck swung open. A tall, familiar figure stepped out, and her heart stopped. Ty Borden. He was there, standing in front of her. After all this time, after all the years of wondering, waiting, and hoping. Her breath hitched in her chest, and she instinctively stepped forward, her mind racing. This wasn't possible. It couldn't be. But as Ty turned toward her, his eyes locking with hers, she knew. This was real. His presence brought a rush of emotions. For so long, she had buried the pain of his departure deep within herself, trying to heal, trying to build a life without him. But now, with just a glance, the walls she had carefully constructed began to crumble. Ty, Amy whispered, her voice shaky. It was more of a question than a greeting, as if the reality of his return had yet to fully settle in. Ty smiled faintly, though there was a vulnerability in his eyes that matched her own. "I'm back, Amy," he said, his voice rough, as if the words themselves were a struggle to form. Amy's heart swelled and broke all at once. She wanted to run into his arms, to close the gap that had grown between them over the years, but the uncertainty hung in the air like a fog. Could they go back to what they once had? Could they find a way to heal the wounds that time had carved into their hearts? The sound of a small voice broke through the tension, and Amy's attention shifted to Lindy, who had been playing near the barn. The young girl stopped in her tracks as she noticed her father standing there, her innocent face lighting up with recognition. "Daddy!" Lindy cried, her voice high with excitement and joy. Without a second thought, she ran toward Ty, her little arms outstretched, her face radiant with the purity of a child's love. Ty dropped to his knees as she reached him, wrapping her arms around her. His eyes glistened as he held her tightly, as though he had been waiting for this moment for a lifetime. "Hey, sweetheart," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I've missed you so much." Amy stood frozen for a moment, watching the reunion between father and daughter. The sight of Lindy, so innocent and pure, finally reunited with her father, stirred something deep inside of her. She knew that Ty's return was a gift she hadn't dared to hope for. But as much as her heart ached with joy for Lindy, a part of her couldn't ignore the swirling emotions inside her. The past was a complicated thing, and the road to healing was never as simple as a reunion. Ty's return would bring more than just happiness. It would bring challenges, difficult conversations, unresolved pain, and questions that couldn't be answered overnight. Amy had spent years building a life without him, and now, with his sudden reappearance, she found herself standing at a crossroads, unsure of which path to take. The world around them seemed to fade away as she watched Ty hold Lindy, her daughter's laughter filling the air. The connection between father and daughter was undeniable, but Amy couldn't help but wonder, what did this mean for her relationship with Nathan, who had been a constant presence in her life since Ty's departure, and, most importantly, what did it mean for her future? Her thoughts were interrupted as Ty looked up at her, his expression softening. There was so much unspoken between them, so much history that neither of them could erase. But in that moment, the air seemed to crackle with possibility. Could they rebuild what they once had? Could they heal the wounds of the past and create something new? Before Amy could respond, Jack, the ever-stoic patriarch of the Heartland family, emerged from the barn. His eyes softened as he saw Ty kneeling with Lindy, the moment bringing a mix of joy and relief. Jack had always been the protector, the steady hand that guided the family through its darkest times. But seeing Ty back was a reminder of how far they had all come, and how much farther they still had to go. "Well, I'll be damned," Jack muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Ty Borden, you've got a lot of explaining to do?" Ty stood up, holding Lindy in his arms as he turned to face Jack. "I know," he said simply, his voice full of regret and longing. "But I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." The morning sun rose over Heartland with the same steady rhythm that had defined this land for generations. But today, something was different. The ranch, which had always been a place of healing and growth, now carried an undercurrent of uncertainty, an energy that wasn't there before. Amy stood at the window of the loft, watching the horses graze in the field, but her mind was far away. Her thoughts were tangled with the events of the previous day. Ty's unexpected return had shaken her in ways she hadn't anticipated. There was joy, yes, but there was also an ache that only time could heal. It was hard to know where to begin. Ty had been gone for so long, and in his absence, Amy had built a life. It wasn't the life she had once imagined with him, but it was hers. It was steady, it was healing, and it was now being upended in the most unexpected way. As Amy lingered at the window, she couldn't help but remember the early days after Ty had left. The ache in her heart, the confusion, and the overwhelming sense of loss. Back then, she had wondered if she would ever feel whole again, but time, as it always does, had softened the rawness of that grief, and she had learned to live with it. She had learned to move forward, but now, with Ty back in the picture, those wounds, long since buried, had been reopened. Could she reconcile the life she had built with the past she had left behind? Could she find a way to heal the rift between them, a rift that had only grown wider with each passing year? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the barn door creaking open. She turned, her heart tightening when she saw Ty walking toward her. He had always been a part of this place, a part of her. And now, here he was again, standing in the doorway as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Ty hesitated for a moment before speaking. "Amy." His voice was soft, full of uncertainty. "I know things have changed. I know I can't just walk back in and expect everything to be the same. But I need you to know I'm here to stay. I'm here for you. For Lindy." Amy's heart raced as she listened to his words. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust that he had come back to rebuild the life they had once dreamed of together. But after everything, after the pain of his departure, after the years of silence, she wasn't sure if she could just pick up where they left off. "I don't know what to say, Ty," Amy admitted, her voice shaky. She turned away from him, her eyes lingering on the horses in the distance. "I've spent so much time trying to heal, trying to build something that's mine, and now you're here, but I don't know how to fit you back into this." Ty took a step closer, his heart in his throat. He had missed so much. He had missed Lindy growing up, missed the woman Amy had become, but he couldn't change the past. He could only try to make things right now, in the present. "I know," Ty said, his voice thick with emotion. "I know I've missed so much, but I'm here now, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." Amy turned to face him, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "I want to believe you, Ty. I really do. But it's not just about us. It's about Lindy. It's about our family. I don't know how to balance everything, how to heal the wounds that are still fresh." Ty's gaze softened, and he stepped closer, taking her hand in his. "We'll figure it out, Amy. Together. One step at a time." But even as he said the words, Ty knew that healing would take time. It wouldn't be easy. And there would be moments when the past would rear its ugly head, threatening to tear apart everything they had fought so hard to rebuild. Meanwhile, across the yard, Jack watched from the porch, his expression unreadable. The return of Ty Borden was a turning point for the family, one that could either bring them closer together or drive them further apart. Jack had always been a man of few words, but even he could feel the weight of what was happening. His family was changing before his eyes, and he wasn't sure if they could ever go back to the way things were. Jack had always seen Ty as one of his own. He had watched him grow from a troubled young man into a reliable, loving partner for Amy. But Ty's absence had left a hole in the family, and now that he was back, Jack couldn't help but wonder if the damage was too great to repair. He turned to Lou, who had joined him on the porch. She had always been the pragmatist in the family, the one who could see things clearly, even when emotions ran high. Lou watched Amy and Ty from a distance, her arms crossed, her brow furrowed in thought. "This is going to be hard," Lou said quietly. "Not just for Amy, but for all of us. There's so much unresolved between them, so much we don't know." Jack nodded, his expression solemn. "I know, but we're family, and no matter what, we have to stick together." Lou sighed, looking out at the ranch. "I just hope we can find a way through this. For Amy, for Lindy, for everyone." Inside the house, Tim was having his own struggle. The return of Ty Borden stirred up a mixture of feelings: regret, confusion, and something deeper, something he hadn't allowed himself to acknowledge in years. His relationship with Ty had always been complicated. There had been moments of connection, but also long stretches of silence and distance. Now, with Ty back, Tim found himself questioning his role in the family. He had always been the outsider, the one who had made mistakes and never truly found his place. But this was different. Ty's return was a challenge, a test of everything Tim had ever believed about family, forgiveness, and the strength to rebuild what had been broken. The silence in the house was broken by the sound of Lindy's laughter, a sound that brought a smile to Amy's face as she watched her daughter and Ty play outside. The bond between them was undeniable. But as Amy looked at Ty, a part of her still wondered, could they ever truly move past the years of hurt? Could they truly start over? The days that followed Ty's return were a mixture of hope and tension. Every interaction, every glance shared between him and Amy was filled with layers of unspoken words and quiet emotions. It was clear that their love, though still present, had become tangled in the years of absence and the changes that had occurred in each of their lives. Yet, despite the weight of their past, there was also a palpable longing to bridge the gap, to heal the wounds that had festered for so long. Amy found herself caught between two worlds. On one hand, there was the life she had created without Ty, a life that had allowed her to grow into a woman and mother who was strong, independent, and capable. On the other hand, there was the part of her that had never truly let go of Ty, a part that still yearned for the connection they once had. The question that loomed over her was whether it was possible to reconcile those two parts of herself. One evening after dinner, Amy stood in the barn, watching the horses as the soft orange light of sunset bathed the scene in a warm glow. The barn was quiet, save for the occasional sound of hooves shifting on the hay-covered floor. It was the same barn where she had spent countless hours with Ty, where they had built their future together, and where, in many ways, their past had been shaped. Ty stepped into the barn, his boots making a soft sound on the wooden floor. He hesitated for a moment, then walked over to Amy, standing a few feet behind her. The air between them was thick with emotion, and neither of them spoke at first. "Amy," Ty began, his voice filled with uncertainty. "I know it's been hard, for both of us, but I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. I'm here for you, for Lindy, for us." Amy's breath caught in her throat as she turned to face him. She had heard these words from him before, in the past, and yet there was something different this time. Maybe it was the sincerity in his eyes, or the vulnerability in his voice, but for the first time, she truly believed him. "I want to believe you, Ty," Amy whispered, her heart aching. "But things have changed. I've changed. I don't know if I can just pick up where we left off. It's not that easy." Ty stepped closer, his gaze never leaving hers. I know it's not. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I just need you to give me a chance." For a moment, Amy didn't know what to say. Her heart was torn in two. One part of her desperately wanted to return to the love they had shared, but the other part feared the pain that might come with it. "I don't want to hurt you again," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't want to go through that again. I've spent so long healing, building a life without you. I don't know if I can undo all of that." Ty's face softened and he took a deep breath. "I don't expect you to undo anything. I just want a chance to be part of your life again. To be a family. I know it's going to take time, but I'm willing to fight for it." Amy closed her eyes, the weight of his words settling heavily on her chest. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to open her heart to him again, to give him the space to prove that they could rebuild their life together. But there was still so much uncertainty, so many unanswered questions. Could they ever truly rebuild what they had lost? Was it even possible? As the silence stretched between them, Amy felt a warmth in her chest, a small flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something new. But she couldn't be sure. Meanwhile, outside the barn, Jack watched from the porch, his gaze steady and knowing. He had witnessed so much in his years on the ranch: love, loss, heartache, and healing, but nothing quite like this. Ty's return had brought back memories of the past, both good and bad. He had always considered Ty as part of the family, but he couldn't help but wonder if the rift between him and Amy would ever truly heal. "Do you think they'll be able to work things out?" Lou asked, standing beside Jack on the porch, her voice soft. Jack looked out at the barn, his expression thoughtful. "I hope so, Lou. I really do. But it's not going to be easy. Amy's been through a lot. And Ty, well, he's been through just as much. It's going to take time." Lou nodded, understanding the complexity of the situation. Amy's stronger than she lets on, but this is different. It's not just about their past. It's about Lindy, too. I think that's what makes it so hard. Jack's gaze softened as he turned to look at his daughter. "I know, but family is what will pull them through. They've got to find a way to heal together. All of them." As night fell over Heartland, the ranch seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. The return of Ty Borden had set the stage for a journey of healing, forgiveness, and renewal. But it was a path filled with uncertainty, and the road ahead was anything but clear. The following morning, the family gathered around the breakfast table, the weight of the previous day still hanging in the air. Amy, Ty, Jack, Lou, Tim, and Lindy sat together, the silence between them louder than words. It was as if the air itself was charged with 1,000 unspoken thoughts, each person processing the return of Ty in their own way. Lindy, oblivious to the tension, bounced in her seat with excitement. "Daddy, can we go riding today?" she asked, her eyes bright with anticipation. Ty smiled, his heart swelling at the sight of his daughter. "Of course, sweetheart. I'd love to." Amy watched the exchange, a mixture of emotions flooding her chest. Seeing Ty with Lindy brought a sense of warmth, but it also reminded her of how much time they had lost. She wanted this for Lindy, a chance to have her father back, but she wasn't sure how it would all fit together. Lou, sensing the heaviness of the moment, tried to lighten the mood. "Why don't we all go to the barn later? We could do some work together. It might help break the ice." Tim looked up from his coffee, his expression serious. "I think it's a good idea. We need to be a family again, and that starts with spending time together." As the morning continued, the family slowly began to adjust to the new dynamic that Ty's return had brought. There were still many questions, still many moments of discomfort, but there was also the undeniable sense that they were all in this together. And perhaps, in the end, that was the most important thing. As the days passed, the heart of Heartland seemed to beat in a rhythm of uncertainty and possibility. Each moment was a delicate balance between the past they were all trying to rebuild and the future that remained just out of reach. Ty's return had shaken the very foundation of the family's dynamics, but with each passing day, a sense of unity began to emerge, fragile though it was. There were moments of laughter, of shared memories, But there were also difficult silences, those times when no one knew what to say or how to bridge the gap that had formed over the years. Amy found herself spending more time with Ty, slowly allowing herself to reconnect with the man she had once loved so fiercely. Yet every moment with him brought up a new set of questions, and the uncertainty was a constant companion. Could they pick up where they had left off? Would it be possible to find their way back to each other, or would the weight of time and distance prove too much to overcome? One afternoon, as they walked along the familiar paths of the ranch, Amy stopped and turned to face him, her expression serious. "Ty, I need to ask you something. When you left, you told me you needed space. You told me you had to find your way. I respected that, but now that you're back, I need to know. What changed? Why come back now?" Ty paused, looking at her with an intensity that spoke volumes. The wind rustled the trees around them, and for a brief moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. "I didn't leave because I didn't love you, Amy. I left because I didn't know how to be the man you needed me to be. I thought I needed to figure things out on my own, but I was wrong. What I should have done was fight for you. For us." Amy's heart twisted in her chest.